Welcome back. You know that this show is about passion. It's about people helping people. Well, the people we have here today are doing a magnificent job helping people who really need some help. Children. They're reaching out to kids in possible crisis. My name is Dacquino. Their names are Catherine, Ptak, and Amanda Boccardi. Ladies, man, I love what you do. They need to know what exactly that is. Tell me about this program you're working with.
So we actually have two different programs. One is called Youth Almighty, and one is called
Youth Almighty.
Yep.
I like that.
And the second one is called #ISupport.
Say it again.
#ISupport.
Okay.
So Youth Almighty is actually for children who are in need of support and who are struggling mentally with mental health issues. And iSupport is actually a family support program for the youth and their siblings. So how the program actually got started was that I was actually an intern at the Mental Health Association in Putnam County, and they didn't have any youth support services within the county.
Wow.
So we had, through collaboration with everybody in the county, we had received a grant to kind of get something started. So I had went to a 3-day conference with Youth Power up in Albany, which is a really big youth advocacy group, and we had kind of gotten some ideas to start this program. So I had, in collaboration with the kids at Green Chimneys and the Outreach Center, I had kind of gotten their ideas on what they needed, what they wanted, what they were looking for.
So you actually went to the children
Correct.
and said,
Yes.
what do you need?
So this is not me. I did not complete. I have, the credit is towards the kids. I just kind of worded it in the right way.
Excellent.
So basically, I got what they wanted, and I created this kind of program. They even came up with the name. We had a whole list, and we took votes, and Youth Almighty made it. And
so when you say you went to the kids to find out what they needed, what you're really saying is that you helped them to identify some of the situations they were in.
Correct.
Like divorce or drugs
Yes.
or peer pressure and all of those things. And they discussed with you some of the things that were holding them back or presenting a problem for them.
Correct. And these are daily issues that all kids go through. I myself went through.
Yeah.
I struggled through it when I was younger. And I definitely wanted to kind of, when I was going through it, to have a support group just like this, somebody who would listen and understand. So when I was going about the group, that's kind of what I wanted to offer to these kids, is the same kind of support, to kind of show them that, you know, they're not alone, and that they have somebody who understands, who has been through it, who struggled through it, who themselves day to day is using coping mechanisms just to get through and just, go to the next day. So it's definitely, the kids weren't expecting it. I think that they really feel that they are alone. And that they don't have anybody to turn to. So when, this person came along and it's just like, I'm here, I want to help you, they definitely jumped on the bandwagon, and the ideas were flowing. It was really great.
Yeah, it's amazing how kids get it. Mm-hmm. When I was a wrestling coach years ago, I had a kid on my team, and he was the manager. He mopped the mats, and he handed out the sweaty headgear, and I said, Josh, why don't you join the team, man? You're built like a wrestler. He said, I can't discuss it. Finally, he got the courage to call me into the office and said, Coach, I have diabetes. Do you know what that is? And I really didn't. So I researched it and found out that this kid was giving himself injections, that he had an insulin problem, and I went to go look for books for him, couldn't find them. And finally ended up writing a book called Kiss the Candy Days Goodbye, so that this kid had someone to identify with. Most of the books that were out there were for girls. So he was very pleased to find out he wasn't alone.
Yes. Yeah.
And that, in that way, you have no idea how much you're helping kids. I've worked with kids 35 years as a teacher, and I know that they feel that they're the only ones going through this.
Right. And especially when it's somebody that's younger versus, you know, for them to turn to their parents for help or for them to turn to their teachers, they're not really more open to that versus when they see somebody much younger, they kind of can connect in that sense. So it's definitely, it's a gift. I definitely, I love what I do and I love helping the kids, and the kids totally gravitate. So it's definitely, it's a great support. And same thing with Amanda's group, hashtag I support. It's a great program, and she can tell you a little bit about that too.
Yeah,
So,
you know, we live in a country where it's good to be different, but it hasn't always been that way. And for younger children, they don't want to be different. They don't want to stand out. They don't want people to say, look at him or look at her. So it's not good to be different.
And, you know, I definitely think that in this world now, there's a lot of pressures, and they definitely feel it. It's a huge weight on them, and, you know, to look beautiful and to be a certain way and a certain body type and, you know, to be smart and to have that knowledge. And, you know, many kids are just quick to just, you know, be that perfect person instead of just being a kid and, you know, taking it day by day.
In Kiss the Candy Days Goodbye, the nurse tells Jimmy, finally, after he passes out and is brought to the hospital, that he has diabetes. And she says that, you know, your life's going to be a little different. You're going to have to do some things that other kids don't do. He says, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be different. She said, Jimmy, it's not being different that matters. It's what you do with that difference that matters.
I love that. I love that a lot.
And that's important. And these kids have to feel that being different isn't something to be ashamed of.
Correct,
it's something that you have to work with.
You have to embrace it.
Embrace it.
and
Exactly
it's not a bad different either.
No.
It's just different. And like you said, you have to embrace it. And it goes back to not being alone. And it goes back to you're not the only one who's different.
Right.
Everyone is different. Everyone has their own attributes and their own characteristics, their strong points and their weaknesses. And it's good to kind of match up with other kids who may have the same kind of strong points that others may not.
Absolutely.
And, you know, and that's what really is so important.
The other major importance is a support system. And that's where you come in.
That is. So what I do is I actually work with these youths, their siblings. So it's either kids who have siblings like that with mental illnesses or parents. So basically what I do is I like to focus a lot on self-care and empathy. And when you're very young and you're dealing with someone in your family who has, you know, so much going on, it's never really about you. And what you do is you focus so much on them and protecting them, but you also have mixed emotions about it. You also, you know, as a kid, you need attention yourself, and you get resentful and you get angry, but you also love them because they're your family.
Right.
So it's a lot of mixed emotions. So what I like to focus on is kind of, you know, identifying those emotions. And the same thing, you're not alone. You're not the only one feeling that way, and it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to be angry at your brother because it's all about your brother all the time.
Yep.
But what are you going to do with that anger? Are you going to use it in a positive way? And are you going to advocate for your brother and help him and move him along the right path? Or are you going to shut down yourself?
Yeah.
And it's a matter of what you do with it and how you react on those emotions. And like I said, just identifying them is so important.
Yeah.
And it's validation. It's knowing, like I said, you're not the only one to feel that way.
Yeah.
And in order to take care of someone else, you have to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
So what I like to kind of tell, my biggest thing is you can't pour from an empty cup. So, you know, unless you have self-care and you do things at least once a day, even if it's just for 1 minute a day to make you happy, then you can give your best self to other people.
Yeah, what's amazing is that people don't realize sometimes that one gesture by you could change a kid's entire day. Kid comes into school, he's been listening to his parents fight all night long. They're in the middle of a divorce. His grandmother's dying. They don't have money to get them through the day. And then the kid comes into school and he feels hopeless. And all it takes is one person to say, hey, how you doing, man? Where were you yesterday? We all missed you. And that little feeling of someone knows you're there makes all the difference.
It becomes their safe zone.
Yeah.
So that's when kids come to the groups, they feel that this place is kind of their safe zone. They're coming out of their homes to spend an hour and a half with us, and they feel safe and they feel comfortable, and they could just let it all flow, and everything is just they're just comfortable.
It's a place for them. It's
Right.
built for them and around their needs specifically.
When
Correct.
I was teaching teachers, I used to do a program at the college and through the Teacher Center. It was called Project Save. It later became Save Legislation. Not just a project, law. And there were certain things that teachers had to do. One of them was take a course and learn about kids in crisis. And one of the things we taught was kids have domains. They do exist in school, but they also exist at home, and they also exist in the community, and they also exist in a place in their mind, who they are and what they are. And we need to find strategies of promise. And a strategy of promise is something that exists where that kid can go. For example, if he's having trouble in the community, if there's like gangs in the community, or drug dealers, or peer pressures of some kind, and he needs to avoid them and get away from them, we have to find what's available in that kid's there. So it could be the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts or the YMCA or youth basketball or something. And that's a strategy of promise. So we used to try, first we do what you do. We listen to the kid and find out what the problem is. Then we identify what that kid needs to solve this problem. Then we look for organizations and groups and things that provide what that kid needs. And it's often just a matching. And sometimes it's right there in front of our faces. And we say, you know, there's a lot of things to do. And I used to say, did anybody tell the kid?
Yeah.
You know? So
A lot of times it becomes difficult for the kid to identify their strengths. So that's why when we meet with them, it becomes difficult because they don't know where to go. They're kind of just stuck in their rooms and in their own little world and in their own minds, battling all these different issues. And it gets to a point where they have nowhere to turn because they don't know who they are themselves.
yeah. And sometimes it's just making them aware
Right.
of what other kids in that situation do. When I did Mary Loved Daisies, it's a book about a kid who, right in the first chapter, his girlfriend dies in a fire. And this kid is devastated. And he doesn't know how to deal with death. So he goes through all of the stages of grief. He goes through anger and fear and guilt. And as he goes through, the reader gets to read him and go, I felt like that. I felt like that. I felt like that. And realizes that it really, there's
normal.
a stage.
It's normal.
And I used to say, it's a special kind of normal.
Right. It
You know?
is. I mean,
and
it
that's
is.
what we have. Some kids are
is.
too tall, some are too short, some are too fat, some are too skinny.
Right.
Some, you know, like me, are too handsome. You know, they all have things they have to deal with. And again, it's not being different. It's learning how to deal with your difference.
And being
No-
the best you that you
Yes,
can
and
be. That's what you
being
need to
the
do.
best you can be.
Right.
That's why what you're doing is so crucial. And I can't believe that it took so long for people to identify
Right.
the fact that we need to reach out to kids.
Correct. Yeah.
Kids, when I used to work with teachers, one of the things I used to say to the teachers, when you look out into that classroom, don't look at a class. Look at individuals who are risk factors. I'm not saying that because they have a single parent, they're in trouble. What I'm saying is it's a risk factor. Sometimes kids with single parents have problems. simply because that one parent has to work and can't be there all the time.
Right.
There's only one set of eyes.
And it's not only that, just going by that example, you know, one person with a single parent and then you have another kid with, you know, a mother and a father, they might be resentful towards that or be upset towards that. And then that's a risk factor in itself because then a whole bunch of emotions come up. And that's definitely another thing.
And identifying those things and letting the kid know that the kid's not weird. He's normal, a special kind of normal.
Right.
But he's normal. Yeah, I mean, one of the factors that I found very quickly in teaching is the old traditional family, the parents who've been married, who stay married for 50 years, man, that's getting weaker and weaker and weaker.
Yes, yeah.
You know, people have kids and then 5 years later they're divorced. And many times kids have second families. And then there's new issues. Stepbrothers and stepsisters and stepfathers and being taken out of your home to a new place.
Right. And that's definitely an issue that definitely comes up the most is mostly family conflict, and these kids really don't know how to deal with it. And that's why Amanda's group is so good because of the fact that it kind of, the whole community comes along and it's just, you know, you could identify family issues
as a whole.
As a whole.
Because it is a dynamic.
Yeah.
Correct.
You know?
And you have to teach people to realize, and I know this is corny, but kids are people too.
Absolutely.
You know?
Correct. Absolutely.
And it's important.
They're the most dynamic of us all, really.
And they're maturing so quickly too, so.
Sometimes we hear, but we don't listen. And it's important. Kids do send out signals. And we have to listen. I mean, today on the news, an 8-year-old kid took his own life. That's scary. Today, more and more kids, young kids, are depressed.
Yeah.
And they're getting involved in situations that are frightening.
And
that's a scary world.
We actually do, because of things like that and because of, like you said, the risk factors and just the environment in general. And what we actually do is, so once a month we get both groups together and we host something called Food for Thought. So we kind of reach out to different agencies in the community and things like that, and we have them come in, and it's kind of like an educational program for the kids. So, you know, we've done things, we've had, you know, people come in from the Women's Center and talk about healthy relationships, just in general, boyfriends and girlfriends and friends and family members and other things like self-esteem and just, you know, being comfortable with yourself and who you are, and, you know, even bigger issues like youth trafficking that is an issue, and just making them aware of the environment.
You see, in many ways, this new world we live in is a wonderful world. It's a wonderful world. There's so many opportunities for kids. At the same time, it's scary. There's just too much information.
Right.
And
So
all that
available.
stuff is out there, and it's frightening. Kids, they sit there and they go online, and there's pornography, and there's predators, and there's so many things that are out there that we can't possibly keep up with them all.
No.
And the only way we're going to do it is to reach to the kid and find out what's in there. What has this kid heard? What is he being exposed to?
Right. And that's one of the reasons why Amanda's group starts so young at 8 years old, is the fact that, you know, they're maturing so quickly, and at 8 years old,
Just too quickly.
And they can't identify their emotions, they get older and older, and it only gets worse and worse, and the behaviors become more evident, and it only leads down the wrong path.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you are bringing some of these groups together. Now, I was going to ask you how often, and there it is on the screen.
So this is my eye support group. This is held at the Mental Health Association in Brewster. It's on Tuesday nights, 5:30 to 6:30, and we welcome all ages, 8 to 18. So there's you don't need to call ahead of time. You don't need to sign up.
It's
There's
like a
no
drop-in
intake.
center.
Absolutely, it's a support group that you come as you please and you utilize it to.
And you
to the
just
best
kind of like sit around and talk about what's on your mind?
We do different things. We do activities.
Good.
We do lots of different activities. We do, you know, some things like, okay, we made up our own board game about emotions, and it's, you know, it kind of follows Candyland, but it's more like, you know, so you land on this spot and you get this emotion. It goes with the color, and, you know, give me an instance that you felt that emotion, and how did you react on it?
Great.
So, those are kind of some things we do. Other days, we'll sit and, we'll watch something and then we'll talk about it. Or other days we just sit and people just need to talk.
And then when a kid talks about his problem, I imagine you turn to the other kids and say, have you ever had that situation?
Yes.
You know what? Sometimes we don't even need to. A lot of the
It
time,
piggybacks.
They volunteer the information.
Correct. It piggybacks off each other.
It is amazing. You get these kids who are so absolutely quiet, and you press a button, and you mention something.
It's the greatest
I've
thing.
been in a situation
It's the
where,
greatest thing.
and then I sit there going, oh my God, this is the most I've heard this kid say since I've known him.
Right.
And they just pour it
And
out.
and honestly, it feels so great just
Oh,
sitting
it
there
does.
listening.
It's such a wonderful
It's
feeling.
so awesome. Yeah.
And you hear them, and you can actually hear them work it out.
Yeah.
They're sitting there saying this, and all of a sudden they go, I know I should have said this, but I didn't because I thought if I said this, and you go, yeah.
You just have to sit back and listen.
And
That's it.
And sometimes what you don't say is more important than what you do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you
Let
get the
them
chills
do the
every
talking.
time.
But that's what I was saying. You have to not only hear but listen. So now here's ages 12 to 24.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah. So we meet actually every Saturday from 4 to 6:30. We try to add variety, especially in the summers. We try to make it out on the trail to go for a walk or something. But it's similar to what Amanda does, is that we have different activities. So a lot of the kids cope differently. So whether it's through art, through cooking, through playing music, we have all these activities all at the Mental Health Association. And they kind of come in, they kind of sit down, and a topic arises, and like you said, it kind of piggybacks off each other, and we're talking about all different types of things.
Now, is there like a referral
Well, I
process?
mean, the county collaborates with each other. So I work with the Youth Bureau, I work with Child
So Youth
Coordinated
Bureau
Services.
may say, hey, listen, I've got a kid for your group.
Right, so we all collaborate together, and that's
so then
what
you talk
it's
to them
bringing.
and you say, okay,
Correct.
where's this kid coming from? What are we looking to do for him?
Right, it's the community comes together, and that's how we kind of find the kids. And we try to make it inside the schools to kind of give presentations and kind of get the kids involved. And we do flyers and we send out emails and we do a lot of outreach.
And since you work with all of these groups, you have some strategies of promise in your pocket.
Right.
So when that kid comes in and he's talking about divorce, you know that there's a group that works with divorce, and you could say, hey, listen, do you know that there's a group that meets on Mondays, or do you know that this woman is really good with that kind of thing?
Right, and we ourselves get a lot of support as well, because if there's a topic that arises that we feel that there's a conflict, we can go to somebody and we can say they're struggling with this. Is there something more that we can do for this child?
Now, I'm going to say this delicately, but I'm going to say it. You are not psychiatrists.
No.
And you are not psychologists.
No.
You are advocates.
Correct.
Your job is to simply make those kids aware of strategies of promise, places to go that will help them live a better, easier life.
Correct.
Take the stress off whatever it is they're feeling.
Correct.
Great. I mean, that's what it's about.
We try to teach them. They definitely, they don't know how to articulate their feelings and how to speak up and how to talk about what's going on in their heads and who to turn to and how to say it to them. So one thing that we definitely do is we offer that support is, if the child doesn't know how to speak to their parents about whether it's, sexual identity or whatever it is, we try to work it through with them, and then they're able to have that confidence to go speak to somebody and turn to somebody.
As one of your activities, do you do role playing?
We don't, but we do one-on-ones. So when they don't know how to speak about something, then we can say, pretend like I'm your mother, and and then we have that conversation. But I'm not really your mother, and once you get comfortable with it, you can go and you can take this conversation home.
We used to do that with our students as part of health class, where we actually have a kid play a role, and it's fun. And the kids, and they play the father or the mother.
Yeah.
And we say, okay, so you're the father who doesn't want his daughter dating. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
You're the daughter. Have a conversation with your father. And then they play the role, and we hear the things that parents say.
Correct.
Sometimes as parents, we don't hear what we're saying.
Right.
And we don't realize that kids view things in very different ways, and they hear things that they don't get. I'll never forget the time that my wife's a hairdresser, and a mother brought the kid to get a haircut. And while she's giving the haircut, he's telling my wife about where they're going. And they're going to the cemetery. And this kid was, I guess, maybe about 8 years old, 7 or 8 years old. And he said, I wish I could just stay here all day because I don't want to go to the cemetery and see the bodies, the pile of bodies. Mm-hmm. I don't want to see my grandfather that way. And she said, what pile of bodies? He said, dead people are in the cemetery and there's a pile of them. He had never seen a cemetery. And in his mind, when they said dead people are in the cemetery, no one told him they're in separate graves underground.
Right.
He assumed there was a pile, and he didn't want to see his grandfather in that pile.
Yeah.
So sometimes we don't know what's in a kid's mind, and we can clarify some of the misconceptions. I mean, this is a scary world.
It is.
When I left the house today, I didn't know if right now we may be bombing Korea.
Right.
I mean,
and the
it's
kids
a
are
scary
definitely
world.
right. And I mean, the news. You go home and the news is playing, and the kids are hearing all this
Of
stuff.
course they
and they're
are.
definitely exposed. It's exposure. It's definitely.
Now, key. Where do I go if I have a kid I'm worried about? Is there a website online that I could go to and find out what to do? Like if I call and say, look, there's a kid in my neighborhood who I just had a conversation with him, and God, I'm a little worried about him. Is there any way you guys can follow up on that?
Absolutely. We have actually a couple different
Okay. So
forms
this is
to get in touch with us. So the main one is our website. It's mhaputnam.org. And that is kind of, you can go on there and you can kind of get any
and
direction you may need.
MHA is Mental Health Association.
Yes.
Correct.
And basically you can go on there. You can go in any direction from there. But you can get both of our contact info on there.
And mental health is a whole lot of things. It's
There's a whole lot of
drugs,
things, yes.
it's family, it's peer pressure, it's all of those things. So, are there people, I imagine that there's people who are working their tails off, people that you want to recognize on this program today. Who are some of the people behind some of these things that we should know?
Well, there's Dawn Mullins.
Okay.
She does the SPO applications. She's part of the Children's Coordinated Services Initiative. There's Janine Cunningham, who's part of the executive director at the Youth Bureau.
I know one of our cameramen and directors, Gil Mail. He's been very active in the Mental Health Association.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
he has.
yes.
I actually
In fact-
worked with Gil.
That's how I got you.
Yes,
Yeah, it is. Yes, I've actually worked with Gil for a while now. We
Yeah.
work together doing different programs
Yep.
in MHA. He's very wonderful.
Anyone else?
We
And then-
also
Time
have
is-
our
Gil-
director,
Gil is
Megan.
behind
Yeah,
the camera
Megan
going like this.
Castellano.
Our director, Megan Castellano.
Yeah, I
we
mean,
have
these
to,
programs would not be here if it wasn't for her.
No.
If she didn't recognize that
She's
our
our
spotlight.
advocate.
Correct.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
All right, so what you do is wonderful.
thank you.
Keep on doing it. Keep reaching out. Save the world one kid at a time. You know,
We're trying.
We
if
plan
you help
to.
one
Yeah.
kid, then you've helped someone.
Yes.
I can't thank you enough for tuning in, and I certainly can't thank you enough for being here today.
Thank you for
Thank you so
having
much.
us.
What you're
Thank
doing.
you.
Kids need